Hello and good day to all of you. We're happy to be back with you again here on our series on everyday shamanism. I'm here with Andrea Galvin. Hello, Andrea.
Hello.
Hello. And so we attempted to work on this last week, and you know what? Spirit gave us a good practice. So today we're going to go for it, and you should be able to watch it. So I'm going to turn this over to Andrea, and namaste to you.
Thank you. Yes, one of the things we're going to be talking about a few things, but one of the things we're going to be talking about is the difference between knowledge and wisdom. And I treat everything in my life as what do I have to learn about this today? And I learned a whole lot from us doing. We had a great show. It was fun, but I was rushing things and I wasn't paying attention to the quality of what was coming through. And we ended up not being able to upload it. And it's like, I learned a really valuable lesson. Spirit totally had me like rethink all of it. And so hopefully this is going to be a whole different experience for you and I.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Sure.
Okay. So one of the things that is a question for me and has been ever since I was a little kid, I think, is why am I here? Why am I on this planet? Especially when there were times that I felt like I didn't belong. Susan Lynn, her suggestion to pull a card. Well, when somebody in our community suggests something, I usually take that, and I started pulling cards, and I was using the Dreams of the Gaia Tarot, and all of a sudden I saw that there was a theme, and what I saw were the great mystery, which is what a lot of my shaman teachers have called what we're living, the great mystery. Why we're here is to gain knowledge, to gain wisdom, for healing, for the experience of love, for the experience of union, abundance, and destiny. And where I went wrong when we tried to tape this before is I was trying to put those all in one thing. And I realized when I rethought it that the first two are extremely important. Knowledge, how we gain knowledge, and then how that transmutes, or how we use that knowledge becomes our wisdom. So that's where we're going today with some of this.
Beautiful.
And in thinking about how we learn from our life experiences, and the whole idea of telling our story. And I think that's one of the things that I think is so attractive to what you do, Allie, is you have people on and we start to tell our stories. Now, I've told my story in a variety of ways, because in 12-step program, that's like one of the pieces that's actually a healing piece, is as we put things together, we start to tell our story. And I can tell you that for me, as I've healed and as I've grown spiritually, my story has changed. And who I blamed, or what the reasons why I did things, as I gain more information and experience and accept more responsibility for who I am and what I do, that all of that has shifted and changed. And I've been able to own it, which is a really powerful thing to have happen. So our life experience, and for people that are watching this, all of your life experiences from the day you were born, the times when it was wonderful, the times when it was awful, the times when it was so awful that you actually had to like step out and have it be something that you don't even have a memory of. For people who can't remember parts of their life, that is because the soul had to step out and just kind of go on automatic pilot and continue on. And, you know, it goes back to that little image. I don't know how many times I've used this with you both in successful shows and then unsuccessful shows, that whole image of Swiss cheese, of our
Right.
soul and the holes, the energy that has to move away, and it doesn't move very far, but it's an energy that has to be invited back. And there's many ways that one can do that. If you follow a shamanic path, that it's called soul retrieval. And I'm, the way that soul retrieval is done was done before all of this shifting and before the ascension is a little different now than the soul retrieval that is actually very useful today. And I actually have some people that I'm working with, and it's working in really miraculous ways. And I think I've shared, what's weird is because we have this whole show that never will get aired. The part of, as people fill in those Swiss cheese holes, those gaps, literally we physically start to change. And literally people's faces change, and we grow into being whole, and we grow into being mature and able to stand on the planet in a whole different way. So I want to encourage everybody that's watching this, start putting your stuff down. And if you have blank periods where you're like, I don't know where I lived during this period of time, or my whole third grade experience, I don't have a whole lot of memory of that. That can be brought back if you're interested in doing that. And I put my email at the beginning, and I can say it at the end. If people just email me, there's a variety of ways. We could do it in a shamanic way, but there's also there's counseling ways. There's all kinds of wonderful ways to do that. And everyone who's watching this is a light worker. We know that. And the point for light workers is for us to get whole and healthy and ready to work in the ascension in whatever way we're called upon to work. And then the formal schooling, and that includes being labeled as a learner. If you get put in the bluebirds versus the robins, like as an early reader, where you're pigeonholed, what you're told about yourself as a learner, what you believe, all of that is really important, as well as the quality of what you get. Right. If you end up being a literate person, or a way to access the information, whether you read it, with words or not, if you're able to use critical thinking skills, that all is part of the formal schooling. And then the School of Hard Knocks. And I think a lot of us grew up, especially if you grew up in a family where it was kind of violent. I grew up in a violent family. And so the School of Hard Knocks, you learn a whole lot of stuff, like do as I say, not as I do. Mm-hmm. I'll give you something to cry about. There's a whole list of those kinds of things. Yes. Yeah. And those are also things that we get to question and shift and change. I wanted to just briefly share some of the life experiences that have shifted and changed me, especially from a shamanic perspective. I wanted to actually highlight two really good teachers for me, and one in particular, one bad teacher. And the good teachers, and I told this story, but I don't know if it actually ever got aired, but the story of my little Down syndrome boy, Joey, who I taught him a sacred circle song from our shamanic circle. And he came in for, I was teaching him to read, but when I first got him, it was using sign language because he had no language, and he was very violent. He was, I think, 16 years old at that point. And when he came in and he said, Andrea, do you see me? And I'm like, yeah, Joey, I see you. The thing that was different, and I didn't pick up on it right away, is his voice was different. He had a very, very distinct Down syndrome Joey voice. And before he said anything, the first two words out of his mouth was pizza, pizza. I mean, that's who Joey was. And when he came into my classroom and he said, Andrea, do you see me? And I said, yes, Joey. And at that point I thought, wow, he sounds a little different, but I kind of dismissed it. And he said, no, Andrea, do you see me? And then he looked me in the eye and he said, Andrea, do you see me? And he literally lifted the veil and I saw his soul. I did not see the Down syndrome. I saw who he was. And I kind of sat back, and I was already working shamanically in a circle. And I had, I had a shamanic teacher, my first teacher. And I was like, oh my God, he's showing me who he is as a soul. And I'm working with the manifestation of who he is in this lifetime. And he said, okay, good. You see me? Slam.
That's amazing.
And I was teaching in the portal of the portal. The portable. I might have been in the portal too.
Might have been, yes.
Yeah, the portable, where they put special ed is always, away from the main building. And I thought, I can't even tell anybody that I just saw Joey's soul. But I saw Joey's soul. And he was one of the first, that was one of my first lessons. It's like, I believe that. And my teaching was from that place, but I actually got it. And he was the first teacher that gave that to me. And so our interactions with human beings, with other people, you don't get it until like a little bit after the fact. So as, again, the light workers that are watching this, all these wonderful experiences that, especially that they're getting right now, they're all cool experiences that that person. And when we talk about soul contracts, there may be a soul contract. I had a soul contract with Joey. I was teaching him, but he was teaching me, and shamanically he taught me a lot.
Well, he trusted you too, and that's the most important thing. He could just show him his real soul. It was amazing.
Yes. Well, and he knew, his soul knew that I saw him from a soul perspective. The thing with shamanism is that it's colored everything that I do. It's where I think it's actually the fiber of who I am at this point, because it's so much a part of, all the people that were in my shamanic circle, my first one, we were teachers and house cleaners and people who worked in the restaurant and nurses and people like that. And we worked in our community using our third eye and shamanic tools. The other good teacher, and I'm not going to use the person's name, but it's actually somebody I'm working with right now, and we're doing some soul retrieval kind of work and some counseling kind of stuff. And one of the things I had asked him to do was to get a journal and to start paying attention to some specific things. And my first question to him was, did you get a journal? And he said, no. And I was like, are you really serious about that? And he said, well, actually, I'm putting it on an Excel sheet. I know about learning styles. Some people don't use journals and write like I do. Some people, their brains, the way they organize information, use Excel sheets. I would never put the stuff that I was asking him to keep track on a spreadsheet, but that's how he did it. And I had to sit back and say, wow, I am really sorry. You just taught me something really valuable. I made a value judgment on whether you were ready to work or not based on, are you using the tools I told you to get, instead of saying, what would be the best way for you to learn? So even as I'm, using my skills and tools, this person, it was a wake-up call. It's like, wow, Andrea, you were going to say, well, I think we're all done here. We're not going to continue. When really he was doing exactly, but he was using what he needed.
Own way. Yeah.
So in terms, the schooling and the School of Hard Knocks, I guess I need to, I guess I maybe enjoy soulfully the lessons that I have if I'm brought back to a very humble place of awe. I was in awe of Andrea, you know this about how people learn. And here you are making a judgment on this person. And this person is working their ass off and you're ready to go, whoa, you're not doing what I asked you to do. How arrogant. My ego was absolutely involved in that. And in 12-step program, ego, the acronym for that is easing God out, or easing spirit out. So when I ease God out of the equation, my ego is involved. And I'm always going to get thumped up. I rely on my guides. I rely on Bear to thump me upside the head and say, Andrea, knock it off. It's not about you. So,
right.
yeah. So, and the School of Hard Knocks, you know, when you're around a whole bunch of people that are living and it's really hard, like in my neighborhood, kids got beat regularly. So I didn't even know that that was not a regular thing. And so as you look at your story and as your experiences unfold, you'll be able to start sorting some of that out. And I think the beauty for me is that in the School of Hard Knocks, as I've looked at all of that, I found the place of compassion, not forgiveness. And that whole thing is going to be for, you know, another session, but my connection and the healing piece of the School of Hard Knocks is really, really important. And again, it removes the judgment, and it renews all those blocks that I put in front of myself that keep me from you and keep me from my soul. So I also, because we have light workers and we have a lot of people that are raising their grandchildren, I wanted to address that right now in this time of ascension. We have young learners and we have our rainbow kids, and the kids are coming in and, you know, what do young learners know? How are they learning? In the past, what was an accepting learning style? If you could sit and listen to a teacher and take notes, you had at least a 50-50 chance of being successful in schools. We now know that people are kinesthetic learners. They learn by doing, they learn by listening, they learn actually through spiritual stuff too. And so if you have a child where you're a grandchild, or you're not a grandchild, you have a grandchild, or you have a young child, or you're a teacher, and you were in this ascension energy, to just have the awareness that this is shifting and that we're all in this together. And so if we look to each other and say, wow, how are you advocating for your young child if the school is struggling to meet their needs? And good God, we're struggling to even have kids be in school or not in school. You know, I hate what's happening. We're using kids for political fodder. It's really crappy, but we're light workers, and together we have strong energy. And as you talk with each other, and you're going to form coalitions, and the advocacy for young children and for learners is going to shift and change in the ascension. So I just want to put that out there for the people watching, that if you're involved in educating in any way, be aware that there are energy shifts, and you know, you're going to have to advocate. And the beautiful piece is to teach learners how to advocate for themselves. The best education we can give is to teach people how they learn and give them the language and the ability to make those kind of changes. And if we look at how we label success, I call this the chaos and confusion period.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah. And, you know, did you get on the honor roll? How many awards did you get in school? Didn't matter if it was a drama award, but people who had awards, people who had good grades, how we measured success is shifting and changing, especially as we have the rainbow kids and a whole slew of rainbow children coming in. And I'm not sure, but I think that probably some of this is hybrid. You know, we're now understanding that genetically some of us have star genetics as well as human genetics in us, and we're at a point where the energy is high enough that's manifesting in a different way. We measured success through earning and salary perks, the prestige. You know, if you were at a party, oh, what do you do? Oh, what do you do? How we discuss things with, you know, the new people the new friends I'm making in this community, that is like the last question we ask, because probably most of us aren't even working because we're still in our houses. So, you know, how we measure success in the chaos and confusion is different than how we will be measuring success in the ascension. The other part is power, control. We measured in power and control and money, and our government is still stuck in that. A lot of the isms are stuck in still in this way of measuring. As we hit the ascension energy, that's going to be shifting. So as light workers, we need to be exploring that. We need to be talking to each other about that and asking our guides. And I think the whole thing of asking our guides to work with each other, more and more the groups that I'm associated with, whether it's a class or a practice, we start out asking our guides to work with each other's guides. And oh my God, it's very powerful. You're not.
I bet it is.
that information or that energy. And the other piece is the shifting in workers' attitudes. It's in the news right now. You know, people who are leaving their jobs, the young leaders that are stepping forward and saying, well, and in our show that will never be aired, that might be my label for it, the show that was never aired. The example of Greta standing up to the politicians over what's happening to our planet. You know, she's a young girl and she's on the spectrum. The beauty of this being on the spectrum is she doesn't really care what the other people say. She's going to tell the truth. And so understanding that's another piece of this ascension, that as we look at the learners that we have, they're also souls that have come in during this time to be helpful to us. And our young people are redefining how we talk about success. When we look at, I'm going to go through this really fast. Man, I'm going to fit this in an hour. So wrap on your seatbelts, everybody. So experiential life knowledge, you know, our past lives and our life now. And the thing that I understand about past lives, and I've got memories of 3 very strong past lives. The whole point of me having that information is for me to use that, heal that piece, and use it right now in my life and in this ascension energy. And the trauma of past lives or the trauma of now, those traumas are actually springboards for once there's an awareness and a healing and an acknowledging and an accepting of that trauma becomes actually a tool of power. And so it feels really scary when we're like taking a look at some things that may be traumatic. The thing to remember, and it's, oh my God, I did EMDR, which is trauma counseling, probably 4 or 5 times. And every time before I went into my session with the counselor, she'd always remind me, you've already lived through this. So it's not like you're going to be talking about, you're not reliving it. You're just sharing what you've already lived through. There was something really reassuring for that. So if people have amnesia periods or really traumatic pieces and they're like afraid of it and they're eating to numb, they're drinking to numb, they're using drugs to numb, they're shopping to numb, that's all addiction stuff. The way to put down the addiction is to be able to face the trauma and face it for what it is, heal it, and then there is no need to mask that. The importance of past lives and going into Akashic records, the whole point of that is to use that information for right now. We are co-creating in the ascension energy. We're all co-creating along with the earth energies, the animal energies, the plant, the mineral world, ET, we're all co-creating in this ascension time. And it's an exciting time to be alive. And we're all coming with, oh my God, I wasn't quite prepared for that.
Yep. We
can be prepared when we work together and hold each other's hand with we're going to be okay. I kind of almost think of the Wizard of Oz when the four of them are walking the yellow brick road, and they're like, oh my God, we're going to see, you know, the wizard. And they're walking down the yellow brick road. They have to hold each other's hands to face their fears. And then they get there, and it's the stupid man behind a dumb
behind the curtain.
behind the curtain. That's what the truth is. We hold
It
each
is the
other's
truth.
hands. Yes, we hold each other's hands. We walk down the yellow brick road. We get to the wizard, and then we pull back the curtain, and it's like, oh. And so to know that that is the truth, you know, the Wizard of that whole Wizard of Oz deal, that's actually to me like another little shamanic teaching piece. That whole story. If we hold each other's hand down the yellow brick road when we get to pulling back the curtain, we're gonna go, oh my God, what a buffoon. So yep. And so, and the other part of experiential life is the adult influences. When we get into the adult world, I don't know about you, Ellie, but I remember when I was getting ready to graduate, and I was like, wow, I knew the world of high school, I knew the world of grade school, but I don't know the world that I'm stepping away from, it. I'm not going to have any of the supports I had.
Right. Yeah. You're the big girl now. Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't feel prepared as the big girl. And as I walked out, money, property, prestige, and power were and the way women were supposed to be and what they could do or not do. That's what I was facing. And every part of my soul was saying, yeah, but there's an untruth to that.
There is.
And so I kind of walked into it and said, well, I'm going to keep kind of looking around. I'm going to keep my mouth shut and my head low. And just go through that. But to be aware of those influences, and if those influences are still influencing us today, to just realize that in the ascension, those particular values are going to be shifting. We learned as adults to ignore our gut instinct. One of my best tools is my gut instinct. So if I get a gut, pay attention, or, you know, I call it my little antenna going up. I need to pay attention to that, because yes. And encouraging light workers that, you know, when you're getting that little gut twist, that's really important to pay attention to and explore. And also the untruths that we learned in our childhood. The things that I came to a conclusion about as a little kid, like at 2 years old, I made the decision that I made better decision, that I knew better for me than what the adults were doing, because every time the adults made a decision and I got hurt, I'm like, well, that was a dumb idea. But I didn't have.
That's young. Wow. 2 years old. Wow.
I actually have memories of that. But I didn't, you know, our brains, the way they mature, I didn't have the abstract ability just because my brain hadn't developed that far along. So what I held on to were really untruths. They're untruths that kept me alive. And I say thank you to those untruths. My job right now, though, is to examine those untruths and get to the truth. And that's a whole piece of where we all are as light workers too. And the whole thing of learning to shut my mouth, lose my voice, and compromising truth to keep the peace or to stay safe. How that's what I learned with experiential knowledge. And if that's ringing true for anybody watching this, for any light workers, this is part of our journey to be able to show up when it's time for. I see us as 4 and 5D people already, but there's a whole bunch of 3D people that are there out of fear. There's going to be some that say, nah, I'm kind of into the greed and I like having my money and I'm not changing. But there's going to be a whole lot of 3D people that are needing the bridge. They need to cross the bridge. And it was interesting because I was talking to a new friend last night, and I remember when the Catholic Church was changing and some of the stuff that were considered truths, my mom and dad were like upset because they weren't considered truths anymore. And it totally rocked everything about what my parents knew the Catholic Church to be and to be safe. and they went through a really rocky road themselves. And I thought, well, that's kind of what's going to happen in the whole ascension, when the 3D people are like, wow, it's not working. I don't like this, but I don't know how to get anywhere away from this. And stuck in fear. We as light workers are working through our fear now, and we're going to be able to say, hey, grab my hand, you're okay. And we're
Right.
going to be, the 3D people are going to be able to join us on the yellow brick road. Yeah, wow. This is going quite well.
Yeah. Yeah. You're on your second half. So
Yeah, the
you're fine.
wisdom. Yes.
Very
And
good.
what is wisdom and how is it different than knowledge? And when I looked those words up, the wisdom was the experience or foresight, prudence on when and where to use the information.
Mhm.
Knowledge is our knowledge, whether we're getting it through experiential or formal or the school of hard knocks. All of that is really valuable knowledge. How I
True.
apply that and how I move that, when we move our knowledge into a spiritual energy, it becomes the knowledge. And
Yep.
and we're all,
Utilizing the knowledge. Yeah.
yes,
And
we're all
making
there too.
choices. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Mhm.
Some of the things that I use for myself, actions versus words. I always watch people's actions. I don't watch their words, because I learned at 2 years old that what people said and what people did was way different.
True.
And that I watched the actions. And there are many teachers, and you don't know when you're going to get a teacher. It can be like the person that cuts you off and takes your parking space could actually be a teacher. And there may be a thing that's like a domino, like that caused something, and then you get to a like aha moment. So I still get feelings around it, but I acknowledge the feelings now, and it's like I don't have to put a value on the person. I can just say, well, if they are a teacher, they're not, I really don't want to ever see you take my parking spot again, lady, because I might get out and like smack you upside the head the next time. But
Right. Or we also see what we don't want to be.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And as teachers, as I remember one of my student teaching situations with the deaf kids, they put me with a really bad teacher. And I said, what are you guys doing? They said, well, she's getting ready to retire and we see you going into her place. I was like, oh, okay. I was really looking for like a mentor. I love having mentors. Not, oh, you're gonna like, you kind of have to eke this out on your own and use the kids and you trust your gut and all of that. That's how I had to do that student teaching, which is kind of where we are in this ascension stuff. It's where we are with doing this everyday shamanism piece. Right. There isn't a textbook for this stuff. So, yep. So removing my judgment of bad teachers. And the bad teacher part, I want to go back and talk about Tommy Laurie, because he was a man that I kept having to deal with when I lived on Martha's Vineyard. And he was an alcoholic and really, really awful for me. He looked like my grandfather who molested me. So man, talk about like hitting things and, like reactions. And one of the power animals that came through for me in an exercise that I was involved with, and we were working with some new people that were working with power animals, and the woman brought through a porcupine for me. And I thought, bear is my power animal. Why is this porcupine coming in? And the thing that I have learned is that when an animal comes into your life, you need to, well, you don't need to, but you'll shortchange yourself if you don't learn about them. What do they eat? How do they live? All of that. And when porcupine came in, I explored them, including all the different kinds of porcupines. Well, Tommy Laurie, I go to 12-step program. I was in a 12-step meeting. He came in drunk and he sat down next to me and he encroached on my personal space. I mean, literally his chair was up next to me and he was touching my body, freaking me out. And I called on Bear and I said, Bear, please help. You know, I'm like so triggered right now. I don't know what to do. And Bear said, you have porcupine. And I was like, oh God, okay. I called in an African porcupine whose quills are about 2 feet long, maybe. And
I love this.
Yeah, and if you get involved with power animals, it's so much fun because they become like a part of you. So I brought in porcupine and literally I felt my face become like porcupine like, you know, I felt like a little furry face and the whiskers. I was like, oh, I'm becoming porcupine. And I had these huge, and I brought an African porcupine because I needed those quills to back it. And it was like, okay, porcupines do not throw their quills. All they do is they open them up. And if they're being attacked, whoever's attacking them runs into the quill and actually impales themselves. And it's not anything that the porcupine does. So I opened up my quills. Tommy Laurie moved his chair literally probably 2 feet away from me, the length of the quills.
Uh-huh.
As I started to think about like bad teachers and who was the teacher that taught me the most shamanically, it was Tommy Laurie. He taught me how to use power animals in a way that I had never. I mean, I use Bear all the time, but when you start working with power animals, they can help you in a whole bunch of ways that you may not ever know.
Not even realize. Yep.
Yes.
That's awesome.
He also taught me how to use white light. When I lived on Martha's Vineyard, I was a teacher, but I also had a cleaning business because you had to work a lot in order to make the rent. And we had stopped cleaning to get lunch, and we were in a deli, and Tommy Laurie's brother had a fish market next to the deli, and he was never not drunk walking by the window. He sees me and he looks in and he's going to come into the deli, and he turned around and I knew that that's where he was coming. Now the people that I had cleaning, it was my cleaning business, and it was teachers and students, and I would pair people up. And one of the teachers that I had, well, none of the teachers knew that I was working shamanically. The kids in the school knew, but the teachers didn't. And as Tommy Laurie walked in, I knew about white light and I'd used it kind of peripherally, but you know, kind of half-assed. And I'm like, well, if white light actually works, I literally did a white light wall from the ceiling all the way down and sealed it right down. And it was like it was an invisible window. And as he started to walk towards me, he kept like bouncing into it and he could not get to me. And he turned around and he walked back out. And my friend Laura, who was also a special ed teacher, she said, Andrea, what did you just do with Tommy Laurie? I said, well, I learned how to use white light and I just made a white light shield and he couldn't get through it. And it was like my skeptic's voice, every tool that I got, I always had a little bit of a skeptic's voice. And it was like, white light works, Andrea. Start taking it really seriously. I would not have had that experience and that profound learning about the tools that I was getting had Tommy Laurie not threatened me. Yeah. So the understanding of using tools, I again owe to Tommy Laurie. Not a teacher that I wouldn't sign up for his class, but that's who he was. And then the last one, which was so bizarre, I had the opportunity to go teach in England, and I had come back and a lot of stuff had happened. I came back to Martha's Vineyard and somebody must have been using my car or something because my car was down there at the boat. I get in my car and I'm going to be, I was driving down the middle of the island, which is a state highway. And I was coming up to passing the high school. And there on the side of the road was Tommy Laurie, kind of halfway crouched down, hitchhiking. He had and he didn't have any teeth, and he'd always had this like lecherous kind of smile. And he had this little dog that it was a little German Shepherd, and it was a young dog that he was torturous to the animal. We kept trying to see if we could get somebody to, animal control to go out and get the dog, and it never did happen. Well, anyway, as I went by him, he's hitchhiking. I'm like, there's no way I'm stopping to pick him up. And he kind of like just waved. I get to my friend Nancy's house. And by the way, Nancy is the one that I think is going to help with, if people are interested in doing power animal work, we're going to figure out how to.
Excellent.
Nancy's, she's a shamanic sister of mine. She's going to work with us on that. Anyway, I was on my way to Nancy's house, and I went in and I said, don't you know, the first person off the boat, I've been away in another country. The first person I see is Tommy Laurie and his dog. And she said, what do you mean? I said, I just saw him. He was hitchhiking down by the high school. She said, Andrea, he died 3 months ago. And he set his house on fire, and he and the dog burned up. And I said, no, I saw him. He waved at me. He was hitchhiking. That was my first experience with a spirit coming through from the other side and actually making themselves known.
No, yeah, that's amazing. Yeah,
yeah. So for being a bad teacher, I learned a whole lot from him. And at some point, you and I were kind of laughing about, what our parents used to say, if I knew then what I know now.
Right.
I feel that way even as I'm learning all of this.
Learning about that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so these are all common experiences. They're all common of us light workers. They're all things that unite us in our wisdom.
That's true.
The last piece in terms of knowledge and education is this is something people can look up, and a lot of people already know about it, but the whole tapping. I wanted to give this to people, especially if they have kids that are feeling afraid, whether they've gone through scary things around the COVID, or like around me, we've had, devastating fires 2 years in a row, not far from where I live, and kids have been, and their parents have been traumatized. And the tapping, if you look up tapping on the internet, you'll get information on tapping. And the picture here shows what's actually used are the acupuncture points. There's other points that can be used too, but it's really simple. And I actually know some of my progressive elementary school teachers and middle and high school teachers use tapping, especially with kids that have anxiety, our kids with learning disabilities or behavior problems and stuff. They start with tapping like right at the beginning of the class. And there's different ways of tapping that just, it brings the whole energy of the body down. And it works with anxiety, depression, physical pain, and insomnia. So that is this little piece of this.
And what a great bunch of information and sharing you offered all of us. It's awesome.
Yeah. Now the last little piece, I want to screen share one more thing, and just it's I want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff with shamanism that has been classically what we've used in the past, but again with ascension, it can be changing. So let me see here. I'm going to read this story because it kind of it's hard to read, but it's the essence of how we work with animals and the natural world from a shamanic point of view. And there's creation stories that are true throughout every tribe, and probably since the beginning of time. And this is a Cherokee story. At one time, animals and people lived together peaceably and talked with each other. But when mankind began to multiply rapidly, the animals were crowded into forests. Man began to destroy animals wholesale for their skins and furs. not just for what was needed for food. Animals became angry at such treatment of their former friends. And this is so interesting. I've got to move our window here. For what mankind was doing. The bear tribe met in council, presided over by Old White Bear, their chief. After several bears had spoken, against mankind for their bloodthirsty ways, war was unanimously agreed upon. For what kinds of weapons should the bear use? Chief Old Bear suggested that the man's weapon, the bow and arrow, should be turned against him. One of the council agreed. While the bears worked and made bows and arrows, they wondered what to do about bowstrings. One of the bears sacrificed himself to provide the strings, while the other searched for good arrow wood. When the first bow was completed and tried, the bear's claws could not release the strings to shoot the arrow. One bear offered his claws, but Chief Old White would not allow him to do that because without claws, he could not climb trees for food and safety. He might starve. The deer tribe called together in council, led by Chief Little Deer. They decided that any Indian hunters who kill deer without asking pardon in a suitable manner should be afflicted with painful rheumatism in their joints. After this decision, Chief Little Deer sent a message to their nearest neighbors, the Cherokee Indians. From now on, your hunters must first offer a prayer to the deer before killing him, said the messenger. You must ask his pardon, stating you are forced only by hunger needs for your tribe to kill the deer. Otherwise, a terrible disease will come to the hunter. When a deer is slain by an Indian hunter, Chief Little Deer will run to the spot and ask the slain deer spirit, did you hear the hunter's prayer for pardon? If the reply is yes, then all is well. And if the Chief Little Deer returns Chief Little Deer returns to his cave. But if the answer is no, then the chief tracks the hunter to his lodge and strikes him with a terrible disease of rheumatism, making him a helpless cripple unable to hunt again. All the fishes and reptiles then held a council and decided they would haunt those Cherokee Indians who tormented them by telling them hideous dreams of serpents twining around them and eating them alive. These snake and fish dreams occurred often among the Cherokee. To get relief, the Cherokees pleaded with their shaman to banish their frightening dreams if they no longer tormented the snakes and fish. Now, when the friendly plants heard what the animals had decided against mankind, that they planned a countermove of their own. Each tree, shrub, herb, grass, and most agreed to furnish a cure for one of the diseases named by the animals and the insects. Thereafter, when the Cherokee Indian visited their shaman about their ailments, and if the medicine man was in doubt, he communed with the spirits of the plants. They always suggested a proper remedy for a man's disease. This was the beginning of plant medicine from nature among the Cherokee Indian nation a long time ago. I chose this because it's a really important, it's how we work with animals, rocks, or earth and plants as human beings. And in the ascension, the energy is shifting, and I see us going back to truly blessing and, many of the indigenous tribes, that it's animal people, rock people, plant people. They see all as a people and all of wisdom and knowledge and spirit. And so to know where a lot of this stuff came from, and then to see in the ascension, we're going back to this kind of energy. The other thing I wanted to share, the Rocks and Feathers class that Danny and Kim are doing is really, oh my God, a fabulous class. And a lot of the work is being done around the medicine wheel. The one piece that is not being talked about, and it's a part that I want to bring to our light worker community, is that, and this was told to me by White Feather, one of my shamanic teachers many years ago, that the races are represented on the medicine wheel, and it's, you know, the yellow race, the red race, the black race, and the white race. And there are Indian tribes that are not in alignment with this, and they think that, you know, their stuff needs to be held back. What Whitefeather told me is that the coming together of the races is extremely important. And again, it's, if we can get the medicine wheel correct with the races, then if there is ET energy or any of the differences that separate us and cause us to hate and hurt each other, or anything that's different, we can use the image of the medicine wheel as a way to heal that piece. When we would do sweat lodges in the group that I was in, Whitefeather always brought in a representative of each race. Well, they became part of our working circles, but, you know, with that awareness. And he took a lot of flack for that. And I think taking a little bit of flack, or maybe a lot of flack, but I think we're not going to take a lot of flack, because there's so many of us and we're all on the same page now, to stand up and say, no, the old way, we respect the old way. We need to talk about the old way, but we need to respond to it in a new, not new age, but ascension age. The building of the sweat. I don't know that people are doing sweat lodges right now in the COVID situation, but I wanted to show people a sweat, especially because I wanted to talk about where the fire is, the way the fire is built. There's a platform, and the rocks are called grandfathers, and the way they're laid is there's a certain way to them. And as that burns and the fire falls down, with each, in sweat lodges, there's usually 4 what they call rounds. And in our round, we started with singing, and then at the end of the singing, and only four rocks would be brought in. And then in the next round, we would do prayer. But before we would start that round, the next 4 grandfathers would be brought in. And then we had silence. And then we also, we kept dream journals, and we would bring in our dreams. When a rock, sometimes they totally crumble, and that's the grandfather giving its life for the lodge. And yeah, so the important piece, I think, or not, I don't know if it's not maybe the most important, but the part of the medicine wheel that we want to also keep in mind is that it's a coming together of one people, that we are one part, that Mitaka Oyasan, and I might not be saying that properly, but that's that Indian saying, we are one. It is the coming together of the races. And the vision quest, I just put that up there because you were actually you had that, you were on that live discussion where one of the speakers was talking about what he actually did was a vision quest. And it's a very, very powerful tool where people go off. There's real specific preparation and things that you end up doing, but a vision quest can just blow your mind.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I just wanted to bring that.
That's excellent.
Yeah. And smudging. And I didn't have this for our last session, but it's like you and I are both teachers, and I wanted to, talk about the use of smudges. It changes the energy, especially sage literally changes the ions in the the air, and it's used for very, very specific things. There's a feather, and using the feather and the smudge, when people are getting ready to either start a sacred ceremony or start a circle and you're using the smudge, what you do is you take the smoke and you move it over your head, you move it over your sides, you bring it down, and you bring it to the back, and then you can ask people to smudge your back. And a lot of times, especially going into the sweat lodge, our feet would be smudged. And so we left out all of all the inks that we were going to walk in with got smudged out. So I wanted to share that with people. There's a whole lot of different things that you can use. And I actually have smudge sticks. I don't know where to show this, but this one actually has some really beautiful flowers. And it's used for something very specific. This is the infamous bloodroot that when my friend Brenda was transitioning, and White Feather gave me the little medicine bag, and there was bloodroot in it, and I was smelling it without realizing what the heck bloodroot was. And my son, you know, we were traveling on the train. My son joined me on the train, and I had a nose the color of bloodroot because I've been smelling the thing.
That's right.
Yeah, it
like
was
when you get too close to a dandelion. Yeah.
Yes. So the other part of working as a light worker is to have that sense of humor and learning how to laugh at oneself. And laughter is actually a very sacred, high energy thing. And then whatever trees are near you, you can use those. And of course, the white sage is the one that changes the energy. And here's a picture of things. One of the things that our circle used that I don't see mentioned at all is bear root. It's also called osha root. And you can get that. It smells wonderful, and it's got a wonderful medicinal use, and it's used for really powerful things. Some of the times when I've had to do some really serious shamanic work, bear root is a part of it, as is lavender and a whole lot of other
tobacco. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to mention just is that if you have asthma, or if you have some kind of problem where you can't have the smoke, there are sprays that you can buy that will take care of it as well, just so you know, because some people have told me that. But
yes. Well, and I remember one time White Feather came over to my house, and I lived in an apartment on the second floor, and he lit some stuff we were going to be working, and there were several of us. Man, it felt like he put like half of a sage bush in there. He lit it, and my fire alarms went off, and we had a hard time getting it off. And it almost brought the fire department, and we were laughing because it was like, oh yeah, I guess we're just going to use like a little tiny piece. We don't need to like
right. You don't need to have the whole thing. Yeah. And other people might think that you're also doing something illicit in there, maybe smoking pot or whatever. Yeah. We have only about a minute left. So
well, this is for cleansing a space. And this is actually the last one. Yeah, and it goes the way you smudge. You do the doorway and then throughout, and it's a wonderful way to bless, especially a new
place,
new space. So we did it. We did it.
So we're going to be retaping. We're going to be taping next on Thursday, and it will come out for you. We're going to be doing this, we think, about 5 or 6 more sessions, possibly. So check back with us after you see this. Give us some feedback. We'd love to hear it. In the meantime, take care of yourselves, and thank you for being with us.
Yes.
Thanks, Andrea. Thanks, dear.